Good morning from Easier Habits Live, your favorite 8 a.m. Central Business live stream. I'm Alec from Easier Habits, a business growth consultant.
And I am Meg. I am a global English communication coach.
All right, so we're probably not going to get a lot of hard data on our ads, and plus even if we did, just around the end of the year is a weird time for that, so we might give a few updates here and there, but we decided to dive into something a little bit more topical today: schedules and working from home with kids over Christmas break.
Yes, but before that, I have a communication tip. And this is one that we've kind of talked a little bit about, but I haven't explicitly said it as a communication tip yet. And that is, when you are in a long-term relationship with someone, it is good to have regular communication about those hard things, right? And hard things can be like actually hard things, and sometimes just this like logistical stuff. So finding some time to build into your schedule, okay, we are going to, talk about, our budget. We're going to talk about our time schedule. We're going to talk about our needs and things like that. Having that scheduled regularly does a couple of things. One is it makes sure it actually happens, which then has the secondary effect of making sure that nothing gets too like bubbled up that it over spills and explodes or whatever. So if you're anything like me and you're a little bit risk averse and conflict averse, then you don't bring things up like ever until your buttons have been pushed so many times that you just like, God, you can't handle it anymore. That is not the best time to be talking through some of those hard things because you're very full of emotion and it's really hard to have those conversations without hurting feelings or keeping a good perspective on it when you're so emotionally involved. Your lizard brain takes over. You can't have your prefrontal cortex, doing kind of the logic and reasoning for you. And so by scheduling those things in regularly, you can make sure that you talk about things, you check in with one another, so that one, things are more smooth. Two, you don't even build those resentments to begin with. And then three, you don't have those explosive times as much. So even if it seems kind of weird at first, like it felt a little weird when we first started scheduling our chats. It was back when we were in Japan. Mm-hmm. But it worked for us, and it really worked for me. I like knowing what to anticipate, especially when it comes to something that might stress me out. And so, hey, if it works, then do it. And so try to schedule those things regularly, weekly if you can. So.
Yeah, in Japan was just moving to another country and family logistics there and being in the middle of nowhere on top of being in another country, like that would be hard even in the U.S.
Yeah.
As a shift from people who typically lived in bigger cities. And so we were so scheduled, not only did we have a night to go through what's difficult for us and make asks of each other. We had this night was our alone night, this was our date night, this was our we kind of scheduled every night of the week so we knew specifically what we're doing. If you ever want more of that, that's fine. We tend to not be quite as structured, unless there is kind of an ongoing very intense issue or something going on. But sometimes it's good to recognize that and just retreat to that.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the things is like we'd had nothing before that. Mm-hmm. And so we needed something I needed something really structured personally, just so I knew, because that kind of stuff just doesn't come naturally to me. And I can figure out a schedule, right? And so that worked really well. I feel like we're now in the habit of bringing those things up regularly so that we don't have to schedule them, that we just talk about them as needed, as we're going to do today.
Yeah. Well, and they kind of morphed into other habits as you do them that feel a little bit more natural and just become part of your routine.
Like our weekly check-ins on Sundays.
So that we've actually kind of been
not so great about lately.
Slacking on.
I know.
And that happens. So this is a good reminder for us.
I've been out a lot of Sundays. If you look at the last 6 weeks, I've been gone for at least half of them.
Yeah. So that's a big check. But some of that has been picked up by our morning check-ins in terms of just business strategy sessions, although not always the planning around what family activities and stuff we're doing for the week. But then when the kids aren't on break, we have our their weekly date time actually during their school,
Yes.
which is the benefits of working from home.
So great.
So
Yeah, because I'm too tired when it gets to the evening time or
Right.
like Friday night. I'm exhausted,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want to do anything, like let alone,
Yep.
think about something that's going to help me like be engaged with you in
Right.
something outside of just vegging and watching a show.
Plus, like restaurants or movie theaters and other places are less occupied during the day.
It's
So
great. Yeah, we've done movies at our movie theater that serves food
Yeah.
and everything, and we'll do like
Yeah.
a matinee, and there's nobody there because it's a weekday during the work
Yep.
week. It's fantastic.
yeah. So yeah, that's great. And I was gonna say, we're framing this as a couples thing, but if you actually look at any like coherent work platform for teams, it includes some aspect of this.
That's why I said any long-term relationship, right? So ours happens to be a romantic one,
Yep.
but this is good for, non-romantic ones as well. Friendships, work relationships, partnerships, family, or I don't know, somebody you want to work with towards doing something.
I guess that's fair. Like I have friendships, even people I talk to weekly, but like I'm not talking to them weekly about the stresses in our relationship.
Yeah, okay, that's true. But friendships, I feel like are a little bit different.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, friendships do tend to be a little bit more organic. That'd be a very, like, even with my accountability partner where we go over our goals, I guess I would feel free to say, like, hey, this meeting isn't going the way I want it, or could we shift the meeting? We did that a lot up front, trying to figure out, like, how much time and what format. But yeah, we don't do that as much.
Yeah.
So yeah, it kind of depends on, I think it depends on having shared projects.
Yeah.
And so, for instance, my accountability partner and I share 0 projects. I do my own coaching things. She, does her, her COO thing, and they're very separate. And so it's like, we don't really, it's easy to just have it be informal because we don't really have anything, an external project writing on the way in which we work together.
Well, and there's no change in the dynamic ever,
Right.
right? And so, like, the reason why you need to have these check-ins regularly with each other or at work or, I guess it's school projects, whatever, is that things are constantly evolving, right? Whether it's external circumstances or within the projects that you're working on, you need to make sure that you're still on the same page going forward.
Yeah. And so what this looks like in work with Agile, for example, is that there's usually an end of sprint follow-up where you talk about what went well, what didn't go so well, etc. And that's the space where people can air, like, that the work process itself isn't working very well for them. It's usually not necessarily, or ideally probably not the room for, like, personal beefs.
No,
And that's something that a manager, like, you probably, one, have to have a good manager, and two, be able to talk, get help from your manager in terms of, like, how to work out interpersonal issues as things are unfolding.
Yeah.
And I guess, like, that's something that a little bit other, but I think there is this kind of weird system. Not many people have adopted it. I think it's really great in principle. I think a lot of people find it burdensome in practice, but holacracy, and they have a place where you can raise tensions, and they do have some limits on what tensions are. They have to be something that affects your role, but like they're pretty clear. Like, I think you'd probably be more successful if it wasn't couched as so and so is doing this thing to undermine my role. But you could call out someone's specific behavior, saying, like, when you do this, this is the impact on my role and my responsibilities. And so they have, like, work related meetings, but they also have, like, strategy and process meetings as well. And again, it's like the taking time out to work on your process, like how you work together is really the underlying principle. And there's lots of, like, little work hacks, but, like, actual frameworks for teams getting their work done, I think, includes this. I'm also thinking the 5 dysfunctions of the team, Patrick Lencioni, that he talks about having trust and then having conflict. And one of the dysfunctions of a team is not having conflict, not bringing these things up. So again, like, frameworks for teamwork really include this component of you have to have, time and space where people can bring up those conflicts. Otherwise, people will avoid the conflict, but also avoid solving the problem that gives rise to the conflict.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, definitely.
Anyway, That was a great communication tip.
Thanks.
So today we are gonna dive into schedules. I actually just Monday tried something else out. During my time clicking on ads and going through funnels and just experimenting with them. One of the things I came across was somebody claiming it was a good hook that I ran 3 companies worth a total of 250 million at the same time with a 5-hour workday. And like that is a heck of a claim. And I'll put an asterisk there. You never know when like a Liver King like situation is gonna come up. That was like a fitness influencer, who said he got super jacked just by eating liver. And he turns out, even though he denied this several times, eventually that he uses steroids.
Yeah.
So like you never know, like, all right, how strict someone is on a schedule of this. But I was curious, like, what are the secrets? And the secrets were really basic. There was the breaking up the day into like 3 chunks, a 2-hour chunk, a 2-hour chunk, a 1-hour chunk with large chunks of time in between so you don't burn out so hard and so you can focus. So like there was limiting your day to the 5 hours, right? So, and I tried that on Monday and that gave me fantastic focus. Every time I thought, like, all right, I'm tired. I'm feeling sick this week. Why don't I just take it easy? I was like, yeah, but if I don't actually finish my work in this period of the chunk, it's just not going to get done. Yeah. And so that was fantastically focused. And as an entrepreneur working from home, it's really easy to like think that like, oh, well, I'll just take a break because I'm feeling tired now and I'll pick this up later. And that leads to you never getting quite as much work done or getting quite as deep into focus but also never quite resting because you're always like projecting work to do later. Yep. And so the time boxing it is huge. And there was a bunch of other small things, but they were all, I guess big in impact, but they're all the things that you would normally recognize. So they're like having a dedicated space where people aren't coming in and out for working, which is difficult with kids, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. There is having this is one that I don't do yet, but maybe it would be good to do at some point. Like have separate technology, have a separate computer and phone for work stuff, which is a great way to basically signal to yourself, I'm leaving the play and do it yourself. Or like the play, do whatever kind of mentality. I'm going into work. That'll help you mentally focus. Dressing the part, dressing up for work. That was another one. So there's a lot of these things that pretty much come right out of Csikszentmihalyi's Flow book in terms of have these rituals that set your work time as separate than your other time, and that will teach your brain to be in focus. And even the schedule, that's kind of that too, like holding to a consistent schedule, like you would if you were going into a job, will train your brain, okay, it's 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. or whenever you want to get into work, it's time to do work now. So, it was all basics. There was nothing surprising there that I hadn't heard before, except for the claim on the face of it, but also just putting it into practice rigidly, I'm like, oh yeah, I get sloppy on these things. And so it would be good to renew those fundamentals and also figure out over Christmas break, how the heck are we going to do that while managing crazy kids?
Yeah. So you had the kids over the weekend while I was gone in Utah. And then I got back and obviously you haven't been feeling well. And so and also I've been like going off doing crazy things. So I said I would take the boys for the next few days, which I'm still doing. I know he gets some days off. Yay! Although the boys are still here and I'm still here, which is, there's still that distraction. So I apologize. Yeah. But, wow, sorry, I just got distracted. It said monitor Meg's funnel and I thought it said monitor Meg's funeral. And I got confused.
I want to see how that's progressing.
I mean,
I want it to be a good one.
Wow. That sounds great. Anyways, so, there's a lot that goes into, taking care of kids. And we are lucky enough that we get to do it together as opposed to, many people who are out there single parenting. And so I feel horrendously grateful to have you as, one, such a great partner, but such an involved dad as well. And so now we kind of have to figure this out, right? We've got 2 weeks of Christmas break. And this happens, again, when they have other days off or spring break or, teacher work days or whatever. But how can we continue to get our stuff done while also not completely ignoring our children whom we love, but also who are, sometimes a little bit attention seeking?
Well, and as background, our traditional way of handling this since they've been like basically babies is split the day. Like if we have a whole day of like no school or something, then split the day in half. And, someone takes them till 12 and then someone else takes them till dinner. And then we kind of split evening time a certain way.
Yeah.
And
that doesn't necessarily mean you're actively doing something with them all the time, at least not recently, because when they were babies, yes, they needed that, but they don't need constant supervision anymore. But you're still kind of the one on call if somebody needs something or whatever.
And the being on call is, again, I think something that's become one of those states where we're not completely working or doing that, and we're not completely playing with them. And so one of the things that I noticed that worked for me better Wednesday, even when I was solo parenting, versus being around and being able to hear the chaos that was happening. I mean, some of it is they just probably want more of your attention because you got back from a trip.
Yeah.
But another piece of it is when I was able to articulate a clear schedule that, like, all right, at this time, like, I'm going to work from 9 to 12, and then I'll see you guys at lunch. I'll have lunch, with you, and then I'll do another sprint from, like, 1 to 3, and then in the afternoon, you'll have me at this time. These are, and also, not just the schedule, but these are the things we're going to be doing.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing that I forgot that I really don't do as well, is I usually have priorities for the week, but this PDF that I downloaded talked about at the end of every workday, write down what you're going to do the next day in prioritized order and just do that order. Don't deviate, don't swap, just do those things in that order. And so like that helped. I mean, it's still like very busy solo parenting and doing the schedule from home. But for the most part, they let me do it. Now, when I came out, I had to like look at the big mess, like orange peel all over the kitchen and living room, and like address those issues. Like there definitely was some like catching up to do. Yeah. But at the same time, they did a really good job once the expectations and parameters were clear that like, okay, here's the time we have at lunch. We'll have some lunchtime, but we can also play some games. Yeah. Here's afternoon time, here's evening time, and what we're doing. Kids also really respond well to that structure. So,
well, and they're 6 and 8 now, almost 7 and 9. And so they are, again, more than capable of entertaining themselves for long periods of time, again, with us in the house for, things as necessary. But there's also still that kind of like hope, because we are around, that they get, that they will play, we will play with them and they'll play with us and it'll be great. And so, what I tried to do yesterday was, all right, I'll play with you guys for a half hour and then I'll do, an hour of work, and then I'll play with you guys for another half hour and do another hour of work. And that didn't really work very well. Mostly because we didn't have that structure of what we were going to do for those times, and I didn't have the times laid out, and I think it was too frequent switching back and forth, because I wasn't able to get back into my work or get back into playing with them as quickly. And
right, the task switching
exactly
on smaller increments of time.
Yeah, and I struggle with task switching already. And so when I feel like I only have an hour, I'm like, I'm not going to be able to do anything anyway, then whatever. Yeah. And I get, distracted or something like that. And so I really was not productive yesterday. But kind of going into today, knowing that and saying, okay, well, I'm going to try things differently. Then, I'll use that as a learning experience.
Yeah. So, I mean, the principles likely, I think 2 to 3 hour chunks of time are very approachable, and they can do that. I mean, even on Monday, essentially, because I do the taping at 8, they did ask me for a couple things between 8 and 12, but it was only like twice in really the 4 hour chunk that I was working. So that actually was pretty effective. And I think, I think the other flip side of this is not just like how much time can we get for work. It's also teaching our kids that they can handle themselves. Like if, as a parent, it might be tempting to be like, oh, am I being selfish asking for work? But also they really should be able to fill their own independent time to a certain extent.
Yeah.
So,
definitely. Well, and I mean, you think about life when we were kids, and I mean, I grew up in a pack. Like we were all just kids doing crazy stuff all the time. Partially because there were so many of us, and partially because that was okay, right? We could just go outside and play with the neighbors, walk, down to the local park or whatever by ourselves, and nobody batted an eyelash. These days, you have to be careful about some of that stuff because your neighbors will call the police on you. And so, it's about finding that balance with giving them the opportunities to have independent playtime, learn how to entertain themselves. Honestly, that's where so much of their creativity will end up coming from anyways. And so fostering that, while also recognizing that you are giving yourself time to work and that you do spend time to play with them.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like just based on experiments that, especially since we have a morning ritual, right? We have like morning prayer and all of that, getting the family together, and they, especially over break, don't necessarily eat that early.
They don't.
But if we wanted to, I guess we could ready them something to eat later.
Yeah.
But, normally there's like the getting ready for school process. But at least we have, kind of that family prayer and maybe, spend time just kind of waking up and getting ready with them. That like up to 8, there's some parent time. But really, they probably could do 8 to 12 on their own and set that expectation. Like we can still have somebody on call for that.
Yeah.
But like, again, if it's only like 1 or 2 questions and they're used to it, then we can probably have that primarily their own time.
Yeah.
Right.
That makes sense.
And then and so we could kind of do what we've done with the whole day, but like just do that with the afternoon, right? The 12 to 5 block, we could probably split up somehow.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a good idea. Let me think. 12 to 5. I make dinner, usually starting at 5. So it's more like 12 to 5:30 because when I'm making dinner...
No, I take the kids after dinner.
That's
I figure
true,
we can
you
do our, usually from like... actively from 6 to 7, but then also when they have issues or whatever, for showers at 7:30.
Fair enough. Okay. Then how about, because I have my room thing on certain days, not every day, but from 2:26-ish is when I log in to 2:50. But I can take them up until that point. So if I take them from 12 to, we'll just say 2:20, 2:25.
2:25, sure.
Because I know that's a little bit of a whatever, but I can be back, around like, I can even go earlier than 5, 4:50 or whatever,
right.
Because certain dinners take longer. So if I have 12 to 2:25, then I do my stuff, and then I've got, officially 5 to 5:30 is when I cook, but if it's a longer meal, then I'll start earlier.
Yeah, that's fair.
So 4:45/5.
I always take 40 minutes to cook. Like if it's a recipe that's not like instant mac and cheese or something like that I'm actually cooking some stuff from scratch, it always takes me 40 minutes.
Yeah.
It's like the magic number.
I can do a lot of things in 30. And then every once in a while there's something that does take me longer or that like I always forget that it takes me longer. Like making sushi or, like the inari sushi things. Like that always takes longer than I think it's going to. Or, I forget to defrost the meat or whatever. So yeah, 45, 30 to 45 minutes. But we usually eat at 5:30 because we're early eaters. Because we get hungry. I get hungry. I don't know. And then you usually have them like, 6 to 7. And then I usually have my door open in the evenings if they need me during their bath time. But there are times when I have just been like shut down and I've been like, don't bug me.
For the most part, it's you telling them not to come in for reading until 7:35.
Yeah, that's well, and that's been especially true lately.
Right.
Because I've just been
And that's fine. You can lock your door. I mean, like, that's one thing I do a lot to set so they don't just barge in. Is to set that, like, nope, this is not barge in time. sometimes they even knock now.
Yay! That's amazing.
Because they expect my door to be locked.
Yeah, there's that.
So
how about, I've been getting up with them. I mean, I got up with them yesterday and today,
Right.
partially because I'm on call the whole time, which is great. But I take them first thing in the morning, so because they get up at 7. So I have that 7 to 8, and I can be that person on call from 8 to 12 because if
I could easily do that too.
Okay.
I don't. As long as the expectation is there, it's not that hard for me.
Okay. And it is a little bit harder for me just because of that, like, I have to disengage and then re-engage,
Right.
and my task switching is not great. So 7 to 8 is me. 8 to 9 we do this, and they're, or I guess 8 to 8:30. Yeah. And then you'll have them until 12 on call, and then I have them from 12 to 2:25. I'll get lunch and then try and get them outside, depending on the weather.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Yes, and then you can have them until I start making dinner, and then afterwards, and then I do story time, and they go to bed.
Yeah, and even during that, we can probably structure them with some free playtime, and I probably will, because I mean they don't actually need 5 hours of solid parental attention.
Fair enough.
And so, but I'll try and make sure, especially like the 2:25 period, that like maybe after that break, I'll give them some free playtime.
Okay.
As well.
Well, and when they're behaving well, they usually get like, half-hour Minecraft each.
Yeah.
And occasionally we'll watch a show or
yeah,
something.
that would be a great break for an hour. So
right?
The Minecraft for an hour or whatever, we could do that.
Yeah.
Later, and that kind of balances out if I'm doing some of that stuff in the afternoon, but I'm on call in the morning.
Yeah.
So, all right. So the trick is, right. So if I have a schedule where I basically have 8 to 2:25 consolidated, that is 6 hours, but I need to plan my break, and I'm trying to think of like how to do that. It's just, like, am I doing that during my on-call time or my off-duty time? Like, am I doing that at like 12 to 1 or something like that?
Yeah. And that's one of the hard things too, again, like, to kind of step out of this and talk to our viewers.
Yeah.
That as we're planning these things, we have to keep in mind, what our kids need, what
Right.
we need, and then, like, not just for work, but also other things. So I need to go to the grocery store at some point in the next couple of days. And
there needs to be breaks.
Exactly. And there has to be a time when I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to have to go at some point when I don't have the boys with me to get stocking stuffers and stuff like that. So, I can take them to the grocery store with me a lot of the time, no problem. But I can't always take them with me. So then I have to figure out, okay, when am I going to do that? And sometimes I wake up early, or I'll go after they go to bed. But again, we also like to have time together.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, I figured just for the next week or two, we'll probably not do the whole, day thing.
It's fine.
And also something that simplifies this for me, and you might notice this missing from my schedule, is like I just had the last scheduled business call until the 4th. So I am actually taking time off from calling people for business purposes, although I'll probably do some asynchronous outreach.
Yeah.
I don't. Next week I'll try and shut things down a little bit more and have more vacation and more time with the kids. Like I'll probably change some of this, but yeah. So that's one thing I don't have to do as much. But again, got to plan that time off, exercise time. And so what I am thinking of, I really like the 5-hour workday idea. Like that is a good chunk of time, but like, especially with break, it's about as much time as you can sprint.
Yeah.
And I think, I'm trying to remember, I think his last name, Trevor Blake. There we go. Yeah, that was it. I was saying in his PDF that like they did a study and that the average person only gets like 2.5 hours of work done a day.
Yeah.
So, like, if you're actually using 5 hours to the full extent and then leveraging those breaks to be able to, like, really sprint and focus, be like, all right, I'm not doing this for the whole day. I have this 2-hour chunk, and I know exactly what's at the top of my priority list. Go.
Yeah.
So, yeah, breaking that down in terms of, like, I have the 6 hours from 8 to 2 off, and then probably maybe, like, an hour and the thing I hate budgeting time for, but I should, is like email. And maybe
Oh,
what I should
yeah.
do is have like one of the hours or something like 3 to 4 or something like that. Oh, we're running up on that at the end. Take 3 to 4 off. Anyway, but this is you kind of see how it's going to go. We have the blocks that we're each responsible for, and then within that, it's just a matter of carving up for me like that specific 5 hours, and then creating a list of what I want to do in that 5 hours and making sure I have enough break for exercise, groceries, whatever, etc. So. Quick business tip, hopefully before our camera dies on us. I wish we had longer batteries.
Right.
So I just got a phone call with a family friend who does business consulting, but is, many years down the road of this path. And it was great. Oh no.
And
all right.
Our video died, but you can still hear us.
Yep. We can set up something else too, maybe. All right, very quick. I apologize. I thought I had enough camera.
We should get one of those things that like you can plug in your camera. It's got like an adapter.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, is just like trying to find a way. All right, come on, USB. No, it's not USB video, USB live camera. All right, sorry. I don't know why the USB live camera, it is plugged in, but it's just not working.
It's okay. We'll turn into a podcast.
Yeah, we are a podcast. Speaking of which, I should probably upload this as a podcast.
We should, yes.
The podcast could be called Technical Difficulties.
Technical Difficulties.
All right.
Oh my gosh.
So, all right. Anyway, I got to talk to someone who is ahead of me, and it wasn't that they gave me any magic bullet. It was just that I got to hear their experience. Mm-hmm. For instance, they do zero marketing. They only do word of mouth, but they have a very specific process of talking to people who are, at or affiliated with companies they might work with, and just talking to them, letting them know what they do and that they're open for work or whatever, or they're closing a big thing. Not necessarily asking, it sounded like, for work, but just so they were top of mind, and they did this. Apparently they work in kind of larger stints with companies for a good chunk of time. And so, projects that might last longer than 6 months, and they might at least, start this process 6 months before the end of that process. So I got to hear their experience, and then also got to just try out things and have that person reflect back to me and say, maybe this. And so it wasn't like any one big strategic insight, but I walked away with understanding, what my options were better, what are some things I'm underutilizing that I have used in past positions to greater extent as a coach. A completely new angle that's probably somewhat easier than what I'm trying right now. And so the business tip is just find someone who is, at least a few years, but maybe many years down the road from where you are, and go just have a chat with them and thank them profusely for their time. So that was a great experience. So and especially as an entrepreneur, man, it you feel like you're on your own, and it's frustrating. And so having someone to go and talk to, even as a coach, I still need that.
Yeah. Definitely.
Right. So you can't see me do my big traditional gesture, but until tomorrow, make big changes one small